So this information right here, how long do you think it would take somebody to understand these concepts in order to work and I guess do a good, consistent job at this? What would you think?
Are you recording?
Yeah, I'm recording.
Okay. I would say maybe like 3 to 4 months, right, is about for you to learn some of the basics. Now, some of them, API automation and UI automation, are harder to do without programming knowledge.
All right. Hey, what's up, fam? We're back at the whiteboard session again now. I'm going to have Arinze do some notes on test automation. So, bro, I'm just going to kick it off to you, man.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So we'll talk about test automation. What is test automation, right? So automation. So let's just say you have a website, right? And I'll just put a web page here. Has a couple of text boxes, probably a button here, a couple of links here, and I just call these some text here.
Okay.
So when a tester is testing this, right,
Yep.
they'll go in manually
Okay.
and kind of, say, okay, I want to make sure this can take 10 characters or 20 characters max.
Yep.
I want to make sure this button lights up
Yep.
to green or red, or maybe, it's inactivated
Okay.
while the text is empty and they get activated. So you have a lot of test scenarios
Okay.
you can test around this website.
Gotcha.
Now, in the back end, you have, APIs here, right? And your APIs are essentially, it could be, your submit button could be one API that has a post request to a database here. Mm-hmm. And then some of these fields might be, a get request from the database to display what the text is. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of APIs kind of going back and forth, right?
Yep.
So like I mentioned earlier, your manual testing is here testing the application here, and you don't know what's going on back there at all.
Yep.
So you can look at test automation two ways. There's your UI test automation and your API test automation.
Okay.
Now, UI test automation, you have multiple tools. You have Selenium, you have Cypress, you have QTP/UFT. Okay. There's a lot of UI automation scripts. UI automation is generally easier.
Okay.
Because what you're doing is you're just writing a script or you're writing programs to enter all these values.
Okay.
Manually. Not manually, but in an automated fashion.
So essentially like synthetic testing.
Yeah, it's almost like synthetic testing, right? Okay. So let's just say, for example, I want to test this page with different types of, let's just call this first name, last name, right, for example. I want to try this with all kinds of different types of first names and last names. Mm-hmm. So I'll have, let's just say an Excel spreadsheet with my test cases.
Yep.
I'll have John, I'll have Sar. I'll also have like a name in Arabic,
okay,
right? In Arabic prints,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, yeah.
I'll have a name in Chinese characters,
yep,
as well, right? I'll have all kinds of different values. And so what my UI automation script would do is once you hit run,
yep,
it'll go first row, pick up John, put it in here, click the button, did that work? Yes or no, right? Gotcha. You go to the next row, do the same thing, go to the next row. So it goes through all this multiple times, and then it gives you a result.
Gotcha.
Now, the thing about UI testing or UI automation is that it is prone to high maintenance. It can easily break, because when you think about it, how many times have you loaded a web page and not all the elements show up?
Yeah.
It happens sometimes, right? So sometimes text might not show up. It might take a long time to show up. And if your automation script has kicked off and your page is not fully loaded, then you get all these things called false negatives.
Gotcha.
Right? The test is failing, but there's really nothing wrong.
Gotcha.
Right? So what a lot of people do instead is, and this is valuable, but where you want to focus a lot of your automation, a lot of times, is on your API. So where you have API automation here.
Okay.
Now, in this page, you might have, for example, let's just say send data API, right? It sends all the data.
Yep.
You might have get, let's just say get page colors API, right? You might also have get first name API, get last name API. Now, the thing about when you hit an API versus a web page, an API, your response is generally about 200 milliseconds.
Okay.
Right? So you can essentially test this part of your application by doing API automation. You can use Postman, Rest Assured, Ready API, which is like SOAP UI.
Okay.
But what you're doing is this sheet of data you have, you're hitting all these APIs multiple times, right? So if you think about it now, you hit this, you're getting your response in 200 milliseconds. Versus on the web page, you're looking at like maybe 2, maybe 3 seconds, right?
Gotcha.
And so what ends up happening here is that you're be able to hit way more scenarios on your API test automation than you are to do on UI automation.
Gotcha.
And then because you don't have to worry about your web elements loading up your DOM
Yep.
rendering correctly,
Yep.
this is more reliable.
Gotcha.
Way more reliable.
Okay.
So a lot of times, we have this thing called the test pyramid.
Okay.
You want to do API testing here. You want to do UI testing here. UI automation, let me just put this is automation.
Okay.
Automation. And then this is for your manual tests.
Okay.
Tests. And then this is exploratory testing, right?
Okay.
So you want to do most of your automation here.
Okay.
You want to do UI automation, less of that.
Okay.
You want to do the least amount in manual testing.
Okay.
And then this is for your exploratory testing. It's like
Break.
just
Just
break things, right?
Yeah,
You can just say, hey, look, I want to try all kinds of weird things. I want to load
Yeah.
the page halfway and then see what happens, things like that, right? So
Gotcha.
high level, without going into too much detail, and knowing that it has been already a long conversation, that's kind of how testing and test automation works overall.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, this makes sense, man. I think just to kind of recap, so you have the UI automation, which is basically slower because you have to wait for think about page loading.
Yep.
So if you have different elements that you need to load up for whatever reason, latency, blah, 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 it doesn't load up.
Yep.
And then API automation, it's much faster. You mentioned 200 milliseconds versus the 2 to 3 second gap that you'll see with the UI piece.
Yep.
So from there, you have a bunch of different API endpoints or whatever that you may want to call, and it's going to do certain actions, whether get, post, or whatever it may be. And then from that standpoint, you get your base of what you're trying to test.
Yep.
Okay. And then the last two pieces you mentioned were manual tests, is if you literally clicking buttons and
Exactly.
you don't want to be doing that
Exactly.
from a scalability standpoint.
From a scalability standpoint. Yeah, if you think about it, you might have, for a web app, you might have close to 3,000 scenarios, right?
Yeah.
If you're doing that manually, you're talking about weeks, right?
Yeah.
You're one person, just weeks, because you want to make sure you're doing it thoroughly.
Yeah.
If you do that from UI automation, you're probably looking at 7-8 hours, right? If you do that on API automation, 30 minutes.
Ah, okay.
Right?
Yeah.
That's so when you're thinking about scale of testing, right? Now the only disadvantage with API testing is that you don't test the look and feel of the application.
Gotcha.
Right? The look and feel, but that's what this final manual testing and exploratory testing is for.
Gotcha.
Is you test the look and feel. What's the user experience? You can't automate user experience. Right? Something doesn't feel right.
Right. Yeah.
But what you don't want is to be spending your time doing a lot of redundant tests or tedious, just you're doing the same thing over, log into the page, put in this text, log into the page again, put in a different text, right? So Yep, I hope I was able to cover as much as I can.
No,
in a short
this
period.
is this was perfect, man. This makes a lot of sense. So, I want to thank Arinze for a great overview on test automation. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us at africansintechnology@gmail.com. We also have Arinze's contact information below, so you can hit him up if you have any questions about any of the stuff that was discussed. My name is Sar Levy, and this is Africans in Technology, where we're bridging gaps and shaping futures in tech. Later, fam.